My husband joked he would leave me for my best friend if he ever had a chance, so I packed his bags. My name is Rosina, and I am 34 years old. 8 years of marriage, 1 beautiful daughter, and countless memories built on what I believed was unshakable love. I thought I knew everything about my husband. I thought our home was a safe place where respect lived alongside affection. But sometimes the cruelest truths hide behind laughter, and sometimes the people who are supposed to protect your heart are the very ones who shatter it. Before I share what happened, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments, and if stories about finding your strength speak to you, please hit that like button and subscribe to join this community. Now let me tell you about the moment everything changed. 10 years ago, I walked into an art exhibition in downtown Austin with no expectations. I was 24, freshly graduated, working my first real job at a small furniture boutique. My friend had dragged me there promising interesting people and free wine. I got both, but I also got something unexpected. Derek was standing in front of an abstract painting, tilting his head like he was trying to solve a puzzle. He wore a simple gray sweater and dark jeans, nothing flashy, but something about his quiet concentration drew me in. When he caught me staring, he smiled and asked if I understood what the painting meant. I laughed and admitted I had no idea. He said neither did he, and somehow that honesty broke the ice between us. We talked for 2 hours that night, standing in corners of the gallery, while the crowd thinned around us. Derek was a software engineer passionate about building things that made life easier for people. He spoke about his work with genuine excitement, but what struck me most was how he listened. When I talked about my dream of managing my own store someday, he leaned in like every word mattered. No man had ever made me feel so seen. Our first official date was at a tiny Italian restaurant 3 blocks from my apartment. The tablecloths were checkered red and white candles flickered in empty wine bottles, and the owner knew everyone by name. Derek ordered spaghetti and meatballs like a kid grinning without embarrassment. Between bites, he told me about his childhood in Ohio, his parents who were still married after 40 years, and his dream of building a family just as solid. I told him about growing up with my grandmother in North Carolina after my father left when I was 6. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand when my voice wavered. That small gesture meant everything. For the first time in my adult life, I felt like someone wanted to build something with me, not just pass time until something better came along. Our wedding was simple, but perfect. We held it in Grandma June's backyard in North Carolina under a wooden arch covered with white roses. 40 guests, homemade food, and a playlist we had created together over months of excited planning. When Derek said his vows, his voice cracked, and I watched tears roll down his cheeks as he promised to cherish me forever. I believed every word. The first 2 years of marriage felt like an extended honeymoon. Derek left love notes on the bathroom mirror, little messages written in dry erase marker that I would find while brushing my teeth. Things like, "You make ordinary days feel magical," or "Cannot wait to come home to you." We cooked dinner together most nights, dancing in the kitchen to old soul music while pasta boiled on the stove. When I got promoted to assistant manager at the furniture store, Derek showed up with flowers and champagne, prouder of me than I was of myself. Then I got pregnant with Lily. Derek transformed into the most attentive partner I could imagine. He researched everything about pregnancy, downloaded apps to track the baby's development, and woke up at 3 a.m. to make me whatever food I was craving. When Lily was born, I watched him hold her for the first time, this tiny pink bundle against his chest, and I saw tears streaming down his face. He whispered to her that he would always protect her, that she would never have to doubt his love. In that moment, I thought I had married the most wonderful man in the world. But something shifted after Lily turned 3. Derek received a big promotion, becoming lead engineer on a major project. The hours grew longer. The stress mounted. I understood, or at least I tried to understand. Building a career required sacrifice, and I was willing to hold things together at home while he climbed the ladder. But slowly, the man who used to write love notes started coming home too tired to talk. The dancing in the kitchen stopped. The compliments faded. Then came the comments. Small at first, easy to dismiss. One evening, while I was cooking dinner, Derek looked at me and said I seemed tired lately, that I should get more sleep. I shrugged it off. A few weeks later, we were looking at old photos from our wedding, and he mentioned casually that I'd been so much thinner back then. I laughed nervously and blamed it on having a baby, but the words stuck to my ribs like thorns. He started noticing everything I did wrong and nothing I did right. The house was never clean enough. Dinner was too salty or not seasoned enough. I was spending too much time at work, or not enough time at work. Nothing I did seemed to please him anymore. I told myself this was just a rough patch. Every marriage had them. We would get through it together. Then Megan came back into my life. Megan and I had been friends since college, bonded over late-night study sessions, and shared dreams of success. She was always the glamorous one, tall and striking, with the kind of confidence that filled any room she entered. After graduation, she moved to Los Angeles to pursue modeling, and we kept in touch through occasional texts and yearly visits. When she announced she was moving back to our city after 5 years away, I was thrilled. I missed having a close girlfriend nearby. I organized a dinner to welcome her home and introduce her to Derek. We met at a nice restaurant downtown, and Megan arrived looking like she had stepped off a magazine cover. Long, dark hair, flawless makeup, a dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Derek stood up to greet her, and I noticed something in his expression that I had not seen in months. Attention, interest, admiration. Throughout dinner, Derek could not stop complimenting her. Her career was fascinating. Her travels were impressive. Her taste in wine was impeccable. I sat there smiling, telling myself I was being paranoid. He was just being friendly, making my friend feel welcome. But a small voice in the back of my mind whispered that he never looked at me that way anymore. I pushed the voice down and poured myself another glass of wine. Megan's birthday fell on a Saturday in early September, and I insisted on hosting the party at our house. I spent the entire day preparing, cleaning every corner, arranging flowers, setting up a beautiful spread of appetizers and desserts. I wanted everything perfect for my friend. Derek offered to play bartender, and I was grateful for his help. At least I was grateful at first. As the party filled with guests, I noticed Derek stationed behind the bar, but he was not serving everyone equally. He hovered around Megan like she had her own gravitational pull, mixing her drinks before she even asked, laughing at everything she said, touching her arm when she made jokes. I watched from across the room while refilling a cheese platter, feeling something cold settle in my stomach. Then came the moment I will never forget. A group of friends had gathered in the living room, telling stories and catching up. Derek raised his glass for a toast to Megan, and everyone quieted down to listen. He started talking about how amazing she was, how lucky we were to have her in our lives. Then he laughed and said the words that sliced through me. You know, if I had met Megan before Rosina, my life would probably look very different. Maybe better, who knows? Everyone laughed. Even Megan laughed, waving her hand like he was being ridiculous. But I saw the look they exchanged, something that lingered a second too long. I forced myself to laugh along my cheeks, aching from the fake smile plastered on my face. When I excused myself to the kitchen, my hands were shaking. I gripped the edge of the counter and told myself he was just being funny. It was a joke. It meant nothing. But jokes are supposed to be funny, and I was not laughing. After that night, the comparisons started in earnest. Derek would scroll through Megan's social media and make comments that felt like paper cuts. Megan does yoga every single day. Maybe you should try it. Or, she really knows how to take care of herself. Look at her in this photo. I started going to the gym at 5:30 in the morning before work. I bought new clothes, spent more time on my hair and makeup. None of it mattered. Derek barely noticed, and when he did, he would say something like, "That is a start, I guess." I felt myself shrinking, becoming smaller and quieter in my own home. The confident woman who had once dreamed of running her own business was disappearing, replaced by someone who constantly questioned her worth. The night of our 8th anniversary arrived with me determined to fix things. I took the day off work to prepare. I made Derek's favorite meal from scratch, a complicated beef bourguignon that took 6 hours to simmer properly. I set the dining table with our wedding china-lit candles and put on the dress I had worn on our 5th anniversary, the one he had once said made me look stunning. I wanted to remind him of who we used to be. I wanted to bring back the man who used to look at me like I was his whole world. Derek came home late. He walked through the door an hour after I expected him, glancing at the elaborate setup with mild surprise but no real enthusiasm. He kissed my cheek quickly, the kind of kiss you give a relative you see once a year, and sat down at the table without commenting on any of my efforts. We ate in near silence. I asked about his day. He gave one-word answers. I mentioned that Lily had made a drawing for us at school. He nodded while checking his phone. Then his phone buzzed with a text, and his face lit up in a way it had not lit up for me in months. He typed a quick reply, chuckling to himself. "Who is that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. Just Megan. She sent a funny meme. I swallowed the lump in my throat and returned to my food. A few minutes passed. Then Derek set down his fork, looked at me with an expression that was almost amused, and said the words that would echo in my mind for weeks. You know, honestly, if I ever had a real chance with Megan, I would leave you in a heartbeat. I mean, do not worry, she is way out of my league. But a guy can dream, right? He laughed. He actually laughed like he had said something clever and harmless. Like he had not just driven a knife into the center of our marriage and twisted it. I could not speak. The food in my mouth turned to sawdust. I stared at him, waiting for him to take it back, to say he was joking, to apologize. But he just kept eating, humming some song to himself, completely unaware that he had just shattered something irreplaceable. Derek, I finally managed. Did you really just say that? He looked up, eyebrows raised. What? Come on, Rosina. It was a joke. You are so sensitive lately. Learn to take a little humor. He returned to his food. The conversation was over in his mind, but in my mind, it was just beginning. That night, I washed dishes while tears ran down my face, dripping into the soapy water. I replayed his words over and over. In a heartbeat. He would leave me in a heartbeat. 8 years of marriage, a child, together a life built on what I thought was love, and he would leave all of it in a heartbeat for someone else. I dried my hands and walked past the bedroom where Derek was already asleep, snoring softly like a man without a care in the world. I went to check on Lily, watching her peaceful face in the glow of her nightlight. Then I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, until morning came, wondering how I had become a stranger in my own home. In the weeks following that anniversary dinner, I started paying attention to things I had previously ignored. Derek's phone, which used to sit face up on the kitchen counter, was now always face down or in his pocket. When it buzzed during dinner, he would glance at it with a small smile and type quick responses that he never shared. When I asked who he was texting, he would say, "Just work stuff," in a tone that invited no further questions. His work hours became unpredictable. He said a major project demanded overtime, but when I called his office one evening to ask if he wanted me to bring dinner, his colleague mentioned that Derek had left early that day. When I asked Derek about it later, he became defensive, accusing me of checking up on him like a suspicious wife. I backed down, apologizing for being paranoid, but I was not paranoid. I was finally seeing clearly. One Tuesday afternoon, I came home early from work with a headache. Derek was supposed to be at the office until 7, but his car was in the driveway. I walked inside quietly, hearing his voice coming from the backyard. Through the kitchen window, I saw him pacing by the garden phone, pressed to his ear, laughing in a way I had not heard in months. Soft, affectionate, intimate. When he ended the call, he stood there for a moment with a smile that seemed almost dreamy before coming back inside. He nearly jumped when he saw me. "Rosina, what are you doing home so early?" "Headache," I said flatly. "Who were you talking to?" "Oh, just my mom. She called to chat." I nodded, but I knew his mother's number. It was saved in his phone under Mom with a little heart emoji. I had seen the screen when his phone sat on the counter, and the contact displayed during that call was not his mother. That night, while Derek slept, I did something I had sworn I would never do. I needed answers more than I needed the moral high ground. His phone was on the nightstand, and I knew his password because he had used it for years. My hands trembled as I picked it up and typed in the code. What I found made me want to vomit. Months of messages between Derek and Megan filled the screen. Flirtatious exchanges, inside jokes, compliments that should have been reserved for me. Megan had sent photos of herself in various outfits, asking which looked best, and Derek had responded with flattering comments and fire emojis. In one message, Megan wrote, "I had such a great time yesterday. Your wife is so lucky she does not know what she has. Or maybe she does not deserve you." Derek had replied, "You always know how to make me feel good. Rosina does not understand me like you do." I scrolled further back, finding more painful evidence. Derek had written, "If only I had met you first. Rosina and I, it is not the same anymore. She has changed, or maybe I have. All I know is that I feel alive when I talk to you." Megan had responded with a heart emoji, and the words, "Maybe some things are meant to be just on a different timeline." My vision blurred. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, phone in my hand, trying to breathe. This was not a one-time joke at a party. This was a months-long emotional affair happening right under my roof, funded by my cooking his dinners, and raising his daughter and pretending everything was fine. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and returned to bed. Derek did not stir. I lay beside him, the man I had loved for a decade, and felt nothing but cold determination forming in my chest. The next morning I texted Megan. I asked her to meet me for coffee, suggesting a small cafe we had visited together years ago. She agreed enthusiastically, adding a bunch of heart emojis like nothing was wrong. Either she was an incredible actress, or she genuinely believed I had no idea what was happening. I suspected both were true. When I arrived at the cafe, Megan was already there, looking perfect as always. Her hair was freshly styled, her nails manicured her outfit effortlessly chic. She stood up to hug me, and I let her, marveling at how easily people can betray you while smiling to your face. We ordered coffee and made small talk. She complained about a modeling gig that had fallen through. She asked about Lily with the casual interest of someone who had never truly cared about my family. Then, when the conversation lulled, I set down my cup and looked directly into her eyes. "Megan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. What is going on between you and Derek?" Her face flickered with something surprise, maybe, or concern about being caught. But she recovered quickly, waving her hand dismissively. "What?" "Nothing. We are friends, Rosina. We text sometimes. He is funny, but there is nothing going on." I saw the messages. Her composure cracked slightly. She blinked, reaching for her latte like a lifeline. "Okay, so we flirt a little. It is harmless. Everyone flirts. Derek loves you. We are just friends having a bit of fun." "Fun," I repeated slowly. "He told you I do not deserve him. He said talking to you makes him feel alive. You called that fun." Megan sighed, and what came out of her mouth next felt like a final twist of the knife. "Look, Rosina, I am going to be honest with you because we have been friends for a long time. If a man is happy at home, he does not look elsewhere. Maybe, instead of blaming me, you should ask yourself why your husband needs to talk to someone else to feel alive." The audacity of her words stole my breath. She sat there perfectly poised, blaming me for her choice to pursue my husband. 15 years of friendship crumbled into dust between us. I reached into my purse, pulled out a $20 bill, and placed it on the table for my coffee. "I wish I could say it has been nice knowing you," I said quietly. "But that would be a lie." I walked out without looking back. I heard her call my name, but I kept walking. Some bridges are not worth saving. Some people reveal exactly who they are, and the only appropriate response is to believe them. I called my grandmother from the parking lot, sobbing so hard I could barely form words. Grandma June listened patiently, letting me pour out everything I had discovered. When I finished, there was a long pause before she spoke. "Baby girl, you have two choices now. You can confront this and decide what kind of life you want going forward, or you can swallow it and spend the rest of your years wondering what if. But you already know which choice you can live with. You have always been stronger than you give yourself credit for." She was right. I had spent years being strong for everyone else. It was time to be strong for myself. Every month, Derek's mother, Patricia, hosted a family dinner at her house. It was tradition, she said, a way to keep the family connected. What it actually was, in my experience, was an opportunity for Patricia to criticize my cooking comment on my weight and remind me how lucky I was that Derek had chosen me. I usually dreaded these dinners, but this particular Sunday I arrived with a strange sense of calm. Something was going to happen. I could feel it in my bones. The house was already full when we arrived. Patricia greeted Derek with a warm embrace and gave me a brief nod. Sandra, Derek's older sister, pulled me aside for a genuine hug, whispering that I looked tired and asking if everything was okay. I assured her I was fine, touched by her concern. Sandra had always been different from the rest of his family, more empathetic, more willing to see beyond surfaces. Then I spotted Megan in the living room, holding a glass of wine and chatting with one of Derek's cousins. My stomach dropped. I turned to Derek with a question in my eyes. "Oh, I invited her," he said casually. "She does not have family here, and these dinners can be boring. Thought she would liven things up." He walked toward Megan without waiting for my response. I watched him join her, their bodies angled toward each other with an intimacy that was impossible to miss. Patricia appeared beside me, following my gaze. "She is lovely. Is she not? Patricia said, sipping her wine. Such a shame Derek did not meet her first. They would have made beautiful children. I did not respond. I could not respond. I walked to the dining room and helped set the table, my hands moving automatically while my mind raced. Dinner was torture. Derek and Megan sat beside each other sharing private jokes, their laughter cutting through conversations. Patricia watched them with approval, occasionally making comments about how wonderful it was that Derek had such interesting friends. Nobody seemed to notice or care that I was sitting right there, invisible, in plain sight. Then it happened again. Derek had been drinking steadily all evening, his guard lowered by bourbon and an audience that seemed to adore him. During a lull in conversation, he raised his glass and announced he wanted to make a toast. To good food, good family, and good friends, he said, gesturing toward Megan. And I will say it again because it is true. If I ever had the chance, I would leave Rosina for Megan in a heartbeat. Laughter erupted around the table. Patricia actually clapped her hands in delight. Cousins and uncles chuckled, shaking their heads at Derek's boldness. Megan pretended to be embarrassed, covering her face with her hand, while peeking through her fingers with a pleased smile. But one voice did not join the laughter. Mommy, why does Daddy want to leave us? Lily's small voice cut through the noise like a blade. Everyone fell silent. My 6-year-old daughter was looking at me with confusion and the beginning of tears in her eyes. She did not understand the adult joke. All she understood was that her father had just announced he wanted to leave. I reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. It is okay, sweetheart. Daddy was just being silly. But the damage was done. Lily did not laugh. She did not smile. She looked at Derek with an expression no child should ever have for her father. Distrust. The rest of dinner passed in awkward silence. People avoided eye contact with me. Even Patricia seemed uncomfortable, though not uncomfortable enough to apologize. When the plates were cleared, Sandra found me in the kitchen, helping wash dishes with hands that shook slightly. That was disgusting, Sandra said quietly. I cannot believe he said that in front of Lily, in front of everyone. My brother has changed, and not for the better. I do not know what to do, I admitted. Sandra put down the dish she was drying and looked at me with fierce sincerity. I was married once to a man who made me feel small. He never hit me, never raised his voice. But he belittled me in public, flirted with other women, made me feel like I should be grateful he stayed. I stayed for 7 years telling myself it could be worse. And you know what? It got worse. The only thing I regret is not leaving sooner. Her words settled over me like a weighted blanket, heavy, but oddly comforting. What made you finally leave? I asked. I looked in the mirror one day and did not recognize myself. I had become this shadow of who I used to be. And I thought, is this the example I want to set? Is this the life I want? I nodded slowly, feeling the truth of her words in my own situation. The car ride home was silent. Derek drove seemingly unbothered by the evening's events. Lily sat in her car seat, staring out the window with an unusual quietness. When we got home, I carried her to bed, and she wrapped her arms around my neck. Mommy is Daddy going to leave. No baby. Everything is going to be okay. I promise. But even as I said the words, I knew I was not being entirely honest. Not because Derek would leave, but because I was starting to realize that leaving might be exactly what I needed to do. That night, after Derek fell asleep, I sat in the living room with a cup of tea that went cold in my hands. I thought about my life, about the years I had spent building a home with someone who no longer valued it. I thought about Lily growing up watching her mother accept disrespect as normal. I thought about my grandmother's words about Sandra's story, about the messages I had seen on Derek's phone. And somewhere in the darkness of that night, a decision took shape. Not a hasty emotional reaction, but a clear, deliberate choice. I deserved better. Lily deserved better. And if Derek wanted Megan so badly, I would give him the freedom to pursue that fantasy. I would not stand in his way any longer. By morning, I had a plan. The first step was logistics. I could not simply walk out the door. I had a daughter to protect, a career to maintain, financial security to ensure. So I moved carefully, methodically, like a chess player thinking several moves ahead. I contacted a divorce lawyer recommended by Sandra. She had used him during her own divorce and trusted his discretion. I scheduled an appointment for a day when Derek would be at work telling my office I had a dentist appointment. The lawyer's name was Gregory Palmer, a calm, professional man who listened to my story without judgment and explained my options clearly. Texas was a community property state, he told me. Assets acquired during marriage would be divided equitably. Given Derek's emotional affair and public humiliation, I had grounds for fault-based divorce if I chose to pursue it. More importantly, I had strong grounds for primary custody of Lily. He advised me to document everything, to keep copies of the messages, to note dates and incidents of Derek's behavior. I left his office with a folder of information and a sense of empowerment I had not felt in years. Next, I called Grandma June. At 72, she was still sharp as a tack, and just as nurturing as she had been when she raised me after my father abandoned us. I told her what was happening, and she immediately offered her home as a temporary refuge. "You and Lily come here whenever you are ready," she said. "This house has always been yours. It always will be." I made copies of Derek's messages to Megan, saving them to a secure cloud account, and a flash drive that I hid in my closet. I gathered important documents, birth certificates, marriage license, financial statements, and stored them in a small bag at the back of my car trunk. I was preparing for battle while maintaining the appearance of peace. Sandra agreed to take Lily for a weekend sleepover with her own children. She asked no questions, understanding without me explaining that I needed time to handle something important. Her silent support meant more than I could express. Friday evening arrived. Lily was safely at Sandra's house, excited about movies and popcorn with her cousins. Derek came home expecting a normal night, maybe some takeout and television before bed. Instead, he found me in the kitchen stirring his favorite pasta sauce, one last time. "Smells good," he said, dropping his bag by the door. "What is the occasion?" "No occasion, just felt like cooking." He shrugged and went to change clothes. While he was upstairs, I finished preparing the meal and set the table. Then I retrieved the suitcase I had packed earlier that day with his clothes, toiletries, and personal items. I placed it by the front door along with a large envelope containing copies of his messages with Megan. When Derek came downstairs, he noticed the suitcase immediately. "What is that? Are we going somewhere?" "Sit down, Derek. We need to talk." Something in my voice must have warned him that this was serious. He sat at the dining table, eyebrows furrowed, watching me with growing confusion. I slid the envelope across the table. "Open it." He did, pulling out the printed messages. As he read, his face went through a spectrum of emotions. Surprise, realization, panic. "Rosina, this is not what it looks like. Megan and I, we are just friends. These messages, they are just flirting. It does not mean anything. You told her she understands you better than I do. You told her you feel alive when you talk to her. You told her, if you had met her, first things would be different. That is not nothing, Derek. That is an emotional affair. I never touched her. I never cheated. There are different kinds of betrayal. You checked out of our marriage months ago. You compared me to her constantly. You humiliated me in front of your family, in front of our daughter. You told our child's ears that you would leave us in a heartbeat. Do you have any idea what that does to a 6-year-old? Derek ran his hands through his hair, searching for excuses. I was drunk. I did not mean it. It was a stupid joke. A joke repeated over and over is not a joke. It is a confession. I stood up and pointed to the suitcase. You said you would leave me for her in a heartbeat. I am giving you that chance. Your bags are packed. You can go to Megan or wherever else you want, but you are not staying here. Derek's face contorted with disbelief. You cannot be serious. You are kicking me out of my own house. Our house. And yes, I am serious. I have spent 8 years being the wife you wanted. Cooking, cleaning, raising Lily, supporting your career, smiling through every insult and every comparison. And what did I get in return? Public humiliation and emotional infidelity with my best friend. I will end things with Megan right now. I will call her and tell her we cannot talk anymore. Just give me another chance. I looked at him, really looked at him, at this man I had once loved with every fiber of my being. I searched for regret in his eyes, for genuine understanding of the pain he had caused. But what I saw was fear of consequences, not sorrow for his actions. He was not sorry for hurting me. He was sorry for being caught. It is too late, I said quietly. Not because of Megan, but because I finally see who you really are. You are not the man I married. Maybe you never were. And I cannot keep pretending otherwise. Derek stood up, approaching me with open hands, like he was trying to calm a frightened animal. Rosina, please, think about Lily. Think about our family. I am thinking about Lily. That is exactly why I am doing this. I will not let her grow up watching her mother accept disrespect as love. I will not let her learn that this is how marriage works. She deserves better. And so do I. He stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for any sign of wavering. Finding none, his expression hardened. Fine, if that is what you want. But you are making a huge mistake. Maybe. But it is my mistake to make. He grabbed the suitcase and the envelope, pausing at the door to deliver a final blow. You know Megan was right about you. You are cold, unforgiving. No wonder I looked elsewhere. I did not flinch. Goodbye, Derek. The door closed behind him, and I stood alone in the house we had built together. The silence was deafening. I walked to the window and watched his car pull out of the driveway, disappearing down the street. Then I sat on the couch, waiting for the flood of emotion, but instead of devastation, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Like I had been holding my breath for years, and finally exhaled. An hour later, my phone buzzed. Megan's name flashed on the screen. I answered, curious what she could possibly have to say. Rosina, what happened? Derek just showed up at my apartment with suitcases. He said you kicked him out. That is correct. I do not understand. Why would you do that? You wanted him. He wanted you. I am simply removing the obstacle. You two can have each other now. There was a pause, and when Megan spoke again, her voice had lost some of its smugness. I did not actually want him. I mean, not for real. It was just fun. I never expected him to actually leave you. Well, now he has. Although technically I asked him to leave, but the result is the same. You got what you wanted. This is not what I wanted. I do not want to be responsible for breaking up a marriage. I almost laughed. You should have thought about that before pursuing my husband. But here is the thing, Megan. A man who disrespects his wife will eventually disrespect you too. Enjoy what you have won. Goodbye. I hung up and blocked both their numbers. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and sat in my quiet house, finally at peace with the ruins of my old life, ready to build something new. The days following Derek's departure felt like walking through fog. Everything was muted, distant, slightly unreal. I moved through my routines, automatically going to work, picking up Lily from Sandra's house, cooking dinners that I barely tasted. People at the store noticed something was different. My manager asked if I was feeling all right. Co-workers offered extra support without knowing why I might need it. Their kindness was a life raft I clung to gratefully. Lily took the news better than I expected. I told her that Mommy and Daddy needed some time apart, that Daddy would still see her, that none of this was her fault. She asked if Daddy was coming back, and I told her honestly that I did not know. She hugged me tight and said she was sad, but that she would take care of me. My 6-year-old offering to take care of me broke my heart and healed it simultaneously. Grandma June drove up from North Carolina to help during those first weeks. She did not offer platitudes or judgment. She simply showed up, cooked meals, read bedtime stories to Lily, and sat with me on the porch during quiet evenings. One night, as fireflies blinked across the yard, she told me about Grandpa Edgar, who had passed away 15 years earlier. Your grandfather was not a perfect man, she said softly. Early in our marriage, there was another woman, a secretary at his office. I found out, and I was devastated. But he came to me with genuine remorse, not fear of being caught. He spent the rest of our marriage proving himself. He earned my trust back through actions, not words. How did you forgive him? It took years, and I am not saying you should forgive Derek. That is your choice, and only you know if he is capable of real change. But I am saying that I understand the complexity of these situations. There is no single right answer. Only the answer that lets you sleep at night and look your daughter in the eyes without shame. Her words gave me permission to feel conflicted, to grieve the loss of my marriage while also celebrating my freedom from it. Both things could be true at once. Through Sandra, I learned what happened after Derek left. He moved in with Megan, just as I had predicted. For about a month, things seemed fine. Then the reality of living with someone set in. Megan liked going out every night. Derek preferred staying home. Megan wanted freedom and spontaneity. Derek wanted stability and routine. They fought constantly. Within 3 months, Megan had kicked him out, complaining that he was boring and clingy. Derek called Sandra crying, saying he had made the biggest mistake of his life. He had lost his wife, barely saw his daughter, and the woman he thought he wanted turned out to be a fantasy that crumbled upon contact with reality. Sandra told him he needed to seek therapy and take responsibility for his choices. She did not offer sympathy. She was done enabling her brother's behavior. When Sandra told me all this, I expected to feel vindication. Instead, I felt strangely hollow. I did not wish suffering on Derek. I simply did not care about his suffering anymore. He had become someone from my past, a character in a story I was no longer reading. The divorce proceedings moved forward smoothly. Derek did not contest anything. He admitted fault, agreed to my terms for custody, and signed the papers without drama. The judge granted me primary custody of Lily with generous visitation rights for Derek supervised initially until he completed a parenting course. I walked out of the courthouse feeling lighter than I had in years. At work, something unexpected happened. Our regional manager announced a restructuring, and I was offered a promotion to manage a larger district in Charlotte, North Carolina. It would mean relocating closer to Grandma June, starting fresh in a new city, giving Lily a new environment to grow up in. I accepted without hesitation. Theo, a colleague who managed our warehouse operations, helped me organize the transition. He was 38, a widower, raising twin boys alone after losing his wife to cancer 3 years earlier. We talked during lunch breaks about the challenges of single parenting, about rebuilding lives after loss, about finding hope in unexpected places. He never flirted or overstepped boundaries. He simply treated me with respect and kindness, reminding me that decent men still existed in the world. When I left for Charlotte, he shook my hand and wished me well, and I carried that small affirmation with me like a talisman. 1 year after packing Derek's bags, I stood in the kitchen of my new apartment in Charlotte, watching Lily draw at the table while morning light streamed through the windows. She had started first grade 2 months earlier and already had a best friend named Sophie. She laughed easily now that shadow of confusion I had seen on her face after the family dinner completely gone. She was happy, healthy, thriving. That was all I had ever wanted. My promotion came with challenges, but I met them head-on. The new store was larger, the team bigger, the responsibilities heavier. But I discovered reserves of capability I had not known I possessed. The woman who had shrunk under Derek's criticisms was expanding, filling space she had denied herself for years. I joined a book club in my neighborhood and discovered a passion for historical fiction. I took up watercolor painting, something I had abandoned in college and forgotten I loved. I made new friends who knew nothing about my past, who met me as Rosina the store manager, the single mom, the woman who laughed easily and listened well. Grandma June lived just 20 minutes away. She babysat Lily regularly, filling my daughter's life with homemade cookies and stories about our family history. Watching them together, 3 generations of women connected by blood and love, I felt rooted in a way I never had during my marriage. Derek visited Lily once a month as our custody agreement allowed. He had completed his parenting course, started therapy, and seemed genuinely committed to being a better father. During exchanges, we kept conversations brief and polite. No rehashing of the past, no accusations or apologies. We were co-parents now, nothing more. I noticed he had aged in the past year, lines on his face that had not been there before, a weariness in his eyes. But that was not my concern anymore. One Saturday afternoon, Derek arrived early for his visit. Lily was still getting ready, so we stood awkwardly in my living room, surrounded by the new life I had built without him. "The place looks nice," he said quietly. "You look good, happy." "I am happy," he nodded, shoving his hands in his pockets. "Rosina, I know it does not change anything, but I want you to know that I am sorry. Not just for getting caught, for everything. The comparisons, the jokes, the way I made you feel small. You did not deserve any of it." I studied his face, looking for sincerity. This time I found it. He was not apologizing to win me back or avoid consequences. He was apologizing because he finally understood what he had done. "Thank you for saying that," I said. "I forgive you, not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying anger around is exhausting, and I have better things to do with my energy. So we are okay. We are not going to be friends, Derek, but we can be decent co-parents to our daughter. That is enough." Lily bounced into the room backpack, ready, excited to see her father. She hugged him, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the man I had fallen in love with 10 years earlier at that art gallery. Then I looked away. That man was a memory, and memories belonged to the past. After they left, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee watching birds gather at the feeder I had installed last month. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the love that became complacency, the jokes that revealed contempt, the betrayal that forced awakening, the painful, terrifying choice to walk away from everything familiar. I had learned that love is not supposed to shrink you. It is not supposed to make you invisible in your own home. Real love sees you, respects you, lifts you up instead of tearing you down. I did not know if I would find that kind of love again romantically, but I had found it in other ways. In my grandmother's unwavering support, in my daughter's pure affection, in the new friends who appreciated me exactly as I was, in the relationship I was building with myself, finally treating that neglected woman in the mirror with the kindness she deserved. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. I thought about that thumbnail I had seen somewhere, those words that summarized my story so simply. My husband joked he would leave me for my best friend if he ever had a chance. So I packed his bags. But what that sentence did not capture was everything that happened after. The breakdown that became a breakthrough. The ending that became a beginning. The woman who thought she was losing everything and discovered she was gaining herself. I packed his bags. But what I really unpacked was my own worth. If you are watching this and something resonates, if you have ever been made to feel small by someone who was supposed to love you, I want you to know that you deserve better. You are not too sensitive. You are not asking for too much. You are not crazy for wanting respect. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your children is show them that their mother refuses to accept mistreatment. Sometimes the only way to find yourself is to lose the person who was making you disappear. I do not know what your situation is. I do not know the complications in your life, the reasons you stay, the fears that keep you frozen. But I know this much. You matter. Your peace matters. Your happiness matters. And somewhere on the other side of the impossible choice is a version of you that is stronger, freer, and more alive than you can imagine right now. Thank you for listening to my story. I would love to hear yours in the comments below. Have you ever had someone joke about something that was not really a joke? Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your own worth? Share your thoughts and let us support each other. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more stories about real women finding their strength. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it today. Your support means more than you know. Wherever you are watching from, I wish you courage. I wish you clarity. And above all, I wish you the love you truly deserve. Take care of yourselves.